Hello, welcome to today's immigration tidbit. I get a lot of questions on family-based immigration preference systems and what it is and how it works. Well, to start, this is the immigration system that divides certain relations that you have as far as the petitioner and the beneficiary. The petitioner is the one that puts the petition forward, and the beneficiary is the one ultimately that is hoping to get the green card. And based on that preference, they would be allowed to come into the United States at a certain time. So there are so many that are allowed per year under the law. And once that amount gets exceeded, then it starts backlogging from the particular countries that, for example, have the most people that are immigrating to the US. And as of now, the backlogs generally are from Mexico, the Philippines, China, and India. Okay. Now, I'm going to be talking about what is the preference system and how it works, but keep in mind that there are what are called immediate relative petitions that are not in the preference system, and visas are always available to them. And I, I'll just tell you quickly what those are, so you know that those don't fall within the preference system, which is good, right? I mean, you would prefer an immediate relative petition rather than a preference petition if you had a choice. So one is a U.S. citizen petitioning a spouse, okay? Second would be a U.S. citizen petitioning a mom or dad, and of course it would have to be a U.S. citizen over 21. And then finally, it would be a U.S. citizen petitioning a child, which is an unmarried son or daughter under 21 years old. Those are the three immediate relative type petitions. And those are the ones that immigration law gives the most preference to, essentially saying, we understand that this family relationship is so important that we're not going to worry about the preference system. We're going to make a visa always available under those circumstances. Okay. So now let's move into the preference system. Now, the preference system is divided into four categories, okay? And for purposes of breaking it down, the first, the third, and the fourth category, the petitioner is a U.S. citizen. Okay, simple as that. I'll tell you what the beneficiaries are in a minute, but the petitioner on the first, third, and fourth are U.S. citizens. So the way it will work is the higher the preference, meaning one, that's the highest preference. Under immigration law, immigration says, okay, if you're under this first preference, at least if you're in the preference system, they determine that you're the most important. So they allocate the most for that, and then going down the line. Okay, so clearly the fourth preference is the least important as far as immigration is concerned. Therefore, it takes the longest amount of time. Okay, so what is the first preference? The first preference is a U.S. citizen petitioning an unmarried son or daughter. Okay, and by son or daughter, I'm referring to one who is over 21, okay, not under 21. That would be referred in immigration law as a child. So that is the first preference, okay? What is the third preference? Well, the third preference is very similar to the first preference, except the only difference is that the son or daughter is married, okay? So third preference is U.S. citizen petitioning a son or daughter who's married. Okay, and you can see why it's third preference in that, well, since they're married, they have their spouse to be with them, and it's not as important to try to bring the family together as with the first preference, where you have a single son or daughter. It's more important to bring them to the family. And then the fourth preference would be a U.S. citizen petitioning the sibling, a brother or sister. Okay. And remember when I said that for a fourth preference petition, it takes the longest? For example, and you're not going to believe this, from the Philippines, a fourth preference petition is taking about 25 years. Okay. And people wait, and they actually come after that time. So that would be the first, third, and fourth preference explained. What is the second preference? Why did I leave that out? That's because the second preference deals with when the petitioner is a lawful permanent resident, not a U.S. citizen. So if you're a lawful permanent resident, you're going to fall under the second preference. And the second preference, to get a little more complicated, is divided into two areas, 2A and 2B. Okay, so what are they? Well, the first part, the second preference, is a spouse of a lawful permanent resident. Okay, so what's called F2A, that's how they reference this. Like F1 is the first preference, F3 is the third preference, F, being short for family. So F2A is a spouse, a lawful permanent resident petitioning a spouse. F2B is a lawful permanent resident petitioning a child. Okay, so someone who's under 21 who is single would fall under F2B. Okay, so there's the breakdown of the family-based petition system, 1 through 4. Okay.